It's been a year-long bloody war in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region, and now a state of emergency has been declared in the country just days after the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, called on citizens to defend themselves against the Tigray People's Liberation Front, with that group claiming to have taken two key cities, both being on a main route into the capital, Addis Ababa. It comes as the U.S. is calling on Americans to get out of the country, also restricting embassy personnel from leaving the capital. The TPLF was a dominant force in politics for at least 3 decades, but over the last few years, its influence has waned after years of anti-government protests. Let's cross over to Johannesburg with Paul Tilsley, journalist for African Affairs. Paul, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit what the situation is like on the ground in Addis Ababa.
Well, at the moment, it's extremely tense. The fighting has not stretched to Addis so far, although people from this region where the fighting is going on, Tigray, Tigrayan people, it's said by several sources, are being rounded up by government forces, taken out of their homes, taken out of restaurants, dragged out of taxis. There's a great feeling of unease. The rebels at the moment are about 400 kilometers away from Addis Ababa, but they are threatening to come there. And as you mentioned in your intro, the U.S. Embassy has actually told non-emergency personnel that they are free to leave if they wish to, and has told all Americans, whether they're in the embassy or not, to try and stay indoors and to gather up enough food in case there's shortages and in case they have to shelter in place.
Paul, can you break down for our viewers the tensions between the Tigray People's Liberation Front and the central government? What are they fighting over exactly?
Well, as often in Africa, it's all about power. Traditionally, the Tigrayans were well represented, and in fact, although they're the minority, I think around about 7% of Ethiopians are from the Tigray region. They have been in power for many years until the present government came in. Now, the present government is made up of members of that particular tribe, so it's extremely tribal, the background to it, that the Tigrayans do not like the fact that now it appears, and many people have agreed with them on this, that the power and the influence is really being concentrated in the central city of Addis Ababa, and the regions are being left to fend for themselves. However, it is the government who started this conflict a year ago by attacking the rebel forces after they claim the rebel forces had laid siege to some of the army's camps up there in Tigray.
Now, these rebel forces currently have the upper hand in this civil war, and they're headed straight for the capital. What happens if they take control?
It has got to lead to incredible bloodshed. It's a tale of two countries almost. It's not two cities, because Tigray is not a city, but Addis Ababa, just to remind you, it's the seat of the African Union. It prides itself for being a cosmopolitan city with many restaurants, many nightclubs as such, and a very sophisticated lifestyle, whereas the rural areas have been really neglected. So if you can imagine rebel fighters coming into downtown Frankfurt, that's kind of what it would be like. And it's a very scary situation.
Now, Paul, fairly briefly, the UN is calling to stop the fighting immediately, yet no Security Council meeting has been called so far. What are they waiting for?
Excellent question. And in fact, I reached out to a good colleague of mine who works in the UN as a journalist, actually in the headquarters in New York earlier today. He confirmed that the Security Council did touch on this matter last month when Kenya was the head of the Security Council for the month. Kenya, of course, is a neighboring country. But it seems to be a case, and he and I both agreed, with the UN increasingly, it seems to be a case in Africa of all bark and no bite. So they're busy pontificating with very heavy statements saying, please stop this this terrible violence. I'm sure you know both sides are accused of making terrible human rights abuses. A UN report came out only yesterday saying there had been mass rapes and mass torture. Over 2 million people have left the area, fled the area. So it is a very difficult situation.